The Buddha sat quietly under the ancient Bodhi tree, his serene gaze sweeping across the disciples gathered around him. His presence exuded calmness, grounding the assembly in a profound silence that encouraged reflection. The morning air carried the aroma of fresh blossoms mingling with the distant hum of nature's rhythm. A gentle breeze brushed against their faces, as though the universe itself listened to the teachings soon to unfold. One of the older disciples, a potter by trade, raised his hand and bowed deeply to the Buddha. "Master," he began, his voice wavering with the weight of years, "how does one approach aging without suffering? I seek your wisdom." The Buddha looked at the man with kindness, his eyes a depthless well of compassion and understanding. "Aging," the Buddha said softly, "is not a thief that steals but a river that flows. Its wisdom guides, not hinders." He gestured to the lotus pond nearby, where flowers bloomed at different stages. Some buds while others leaned toward the water. "Consider the lotus," he said. "Its life is a cycle of unfolding, each stage as vital as the other." The potter nodded slowly, his fingers clutching the fabric of his robe, as though the words reached a part of him long dormant. The Buddha continued, "When we cling to youth, we fight the current, exhausting ourselves against nature's flow. Why resist change?" A younger disciple interjected, his tone edged with skepticism. "Master, is it wrong to desire the vitality of youth? Is this not a natural longing?" The Buddha smiled gently, acknowledging the honesty within the question. "Desiring youth is like chasing shadows," he replied, his voice steady yet soothing. "Shadows cannot be held." He reached for a fallen leaf, its edges curled with age, and held it between his fingers. This leaf lived through seasons, absorbing sun and rain, giving shade and oxygen. "Is it diminished now?" The younger disciple frowned, pondering the meaning behind the Buddha's action, while the older potter's eyes glistened with newfound understanding. "The body," the Buddha explained, "is but a vessel. What it holds, the soul, the wisdom, is eternal and transformative." A sparrow landed near the group, pecking at the soft earth, unbothered by the murmurs of men. The Buddha pointed toward it. "See the sparrow, untroubled by age or time. It acts within its moment, free from fear of tomorrow." The disciples followed the bird's movements, their collective thoughts seemingly transported to a simpler, purer way of existing. The Buddha spoke again, his tone reflective, as though addressing not just them but the very essence of life itself. "Impermanence is not a curse," he declared, "but a reminder of our shared journey through countless forms and moments." The potter bowed deeply. "But Master, how do we accept this impermanence when the heart aches for what was?" The Buddha closed his eyes briefly, his hands resting in his lap as though drawing strength from the earth beneath him. "Acceptance begins with gratitude," he said, opening his eyes with a calm gaze. "Gratitude transforms loss into wisdom, yearning into contentment." He gestured toward the vast horizon where the sky met the land in an endless embrace. "The horizon," he said, "is neither the beginning nor the end. It is the meeting point, the transition of elements." The potter's face softened, his shoulders relaxing as if the weight of his question began to lift with each word spoken. A faint smile crossed the Buddha's lips, his expression warm yet contemplative. "To age consciously," he said, "is to find joy in transitions, to honor the moments that shape the whole." The breeze carried the Buddha's words to every ear, each syllable weaving a thread of connection among the group. One disciple, seated at the edge, raised his voice hesitantly. "Master, how can we practice this acceptance in our daily lives, when the world demands so much?" The Buddha nodded, acknowledging the practical challenge hidden within the question. "Daily practice begins with mindfulness," he advised. "Mindfulness anchors us in the present, where impermanence loses its sting." He paused, allowing his words to settle, then added, Breathe deeply, observe fully, and let go of judgment. Each moment holds treasures unseen by hurried eyes. The potter placed his hands upon his knees, inhaling deeply as though testing the Buddha's counsel in that very instant. The Buddha noticed and nodded approvingly. Breathing connects us to the rhythm of life, he said. It is a reminder that each breath sustains. Regardless of our age, the sun climbed higher, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow across the ground, a metaphor for the teachings shared. To grow older, the Buddha continued, is to draw closer to understanding, to shed the illusions that bind us. He extended his hand, pointing toward the pond where a dragonfly hovered above the water's surface. See how it glides effortlessly, reflecting the light? Its life is short, yet it lives fully, without regret. The disciples observed, their expressions a mixture of awe and contemplation, as the dragonfly darted from flower to flower. Regret, the Buddha said, breaking the silence, is a weight we carry unnecessarily. Release it, and walk lighter. The potter looked at the Buddha, his voice steadier now. Master, how do we release regret when it feels deeply rooted? The Buddha's gaze turned inward briefly, as though communing with a deeper truth. He replied, start by forgiving yourself. Forgiveness is the key that unlocks the door to peace. A gentle murmur of agreement rippled through the group, the disciples nodding, their thoughts seemingly aligned with the Buddha's words. Aging, the Buddha concluded, is an opportunity to refine, to focus on what truly matters, to contribute meaningfully to the world. The breeze carried the Buddha's final words like a melody, fading into the ether, leaving behind a profound silence. The disciples bowed deeply, their hearts touched by the wisdom shared, their minds set on the path of conscious aging. Another day. The sun rose gently over the fields, casting a warm golden glow upon the harvested grains. The Buddha walked among the rows of ripened rice, his steps deliberate, his robes flowing like a gentle stream. His disciples followed closely, each carrying silent questions within their hearts, seeking wisdom in his presence. The youngest disciple, still full of vigor and untempered energy, stepped forward hesitantly and addressed the Buddha. Master, he began, his voice tinged with uncertainty. What binds us together as we age and change over time? The Buddha paused, letting the question ripple through the stillness around them, his gaze turning toward the distant mountains. We are like threads in a vast tapestry, he said, his voice calm and profound. Each thread weaves into others, forming patterns of unity. He bent down and picked a single grain of rice, holding it between his fingers, turning it thoughtfully. See this grain, he said, lifting it for all to observe. It grew because the earth nurtured it, rain nourished it, and the sun warmed it. The disciples listened intently, their eyes following the grain of rice as though it held the mysteries of existence within it. Aging, the Buddha continued, is not solitary but part of a collective journey, deeply intertwined with those we encounter. An older monk, his face lined with the passage of many seasons, stepped forward to speak. But Master, he asked, what of those who abandon their connections, who sever their threads in the tapestry of life? The Buddha's expression softened, his gaze filled with compassion as he addressed the concern. The thread may fray, but it remains part of the weave. No act can sever the deeper bond of existence. He turned his attention to the youngest disciple, sensing the turmoil of inner questions swirling within him. What troubles your heart, child? He asked, his tone inviting openness and trust. The young disciple lowered his head, his voice quiet yet heavy with emotion. I fear growing apart from purpose and losing the strength that guides my actions and convictions. The Buddha placed a hand gently on the disciple's shoulder, grounding him with the touch of reassurance. Purpose is not a fixed destination, he said. It flows like a river, adapting to the landscapes it encounters. He gestured to the field around them, where workers gathered the ripe stalks with care and precision. In youth, purpose may be to sow seeds. In later years, it may shift to teaching others how to tend the fields. The disciple looked up, his eyes searching the Buddha's face for the clarity he had long sought but struggled to find. But how do we know when purpose changes? He asked, his voice tinged with doubt. The Buddha smiled, his gaze turning to the clear sky overhead, where clouds moved silently across the vast expanse. Listen to the currents of life, he advised. Purpose reveals itself when we stop resisting change and embrace what each moment offers. The older monk nodded, his fingers tracing the carved beads of his mala, his thoughts stirred by the Buddha's profound simplicity. And what of those who feel their purpose is lost entirely? Master? He asked, his voice steady yet tinged with curiosity. The Buddha turned to the elder monk, his gaze calm and unwavering as he replied, purpose is never lost, only obscured by the illusions of fear and attachment. Seek within, and you shall find it anew. A soft wind swept through the fields, carrying with it the mingled scents of earth and harvest, grounding the disciples in the present. The Buddha knelt down, letting the grains of soil sift through his fingers, his actions deliberate and reflective. Life, he said, is a circle, not a line. What appears to be an end is often a new beginning. The younger disciple's face softened, his features reflecting the gradual dissolution of his inner conflict as he absorbed the teaching. Master, he said, how can we strengthen the threads that connect us, so they endure even in the face of change? The Buddha rose slowly, his robes whispering against the ground as he turned to address the entire group. Strengthen your connections through compassion and service, he said. By giving, you deepen bonds. By receiving gratefully, you honor those bonds. He placed a hand over his heart, signaling the center from which all meaningful actions arise. Let your actions flow from love, not fear. Fear weakens, but love fortifies the threads of life. The disciples stood in silence, the weight of the Buddha's words sinking deeply into their hearts and minds. Igniting thought and reflection, the older monk closed his eyes briefly, his breath steady and deliberate, and then spoke. Master, how do we know if our contributions are enough to sustain the collective whole? The Buddha's gaze held the wisdom of countless lifetimes, his voice steady and unhurried as he answered. Enough is not measured in quantity but in sincerity. A single act born of love ripples further than countless empty gestures. He gestured toward the nearby stream, its waters flowing gently yet persistently over the rocks, shaping them over time. Each drop matters, he said. Each drop contributes to the river's strength, just as each action we take shapes the world. The young disciple's face lifted, his expression now illuminated by a spark of hope that had eluded him until this moment. Master, he said, if purpose evolves, and connections endure, then what is the role of aging in this greater whole? The Buddha's smile widened, his eyes reflecting a depth of understanding that transcended words. Aging, he replied, is the maturation of the soul, the ripening of wisdom, and the opportunity to guide others on their paths. He picked up a stone from the ground, weathered yet smooth from years of water's gentle persistence. This stone, he said, is strong not despite its age but because of it. Aging reveals the core essence. Polished by time, the disciples stood together, their hearts and minds joined in unity as the Buddha's words wove a tapestry of truth among them. To age consciously, the Buddha concluded, is to serve as both teacher and student, contributing to the eternal cycle of life. The wind carried the Buddha's final words across the fields, resonating like a silent mantra through the open hearts of his disciples. Together, they bowed deeply, their gratitude unspoken yet understood, their connection strengthened by the shared moment of realization. Another day, The air was heavy with the scent of jasmine as dusk painted the sky in hues of deep amber. The Buddha sat beneath a towering banyan tree, his posture reflecting a stillness that emanated peace. Around him gathered his disciples, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of flickering lanterns. An elderly woman approached slowly, her movements marked by the weight of time, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Master," she said, bowing deeply, "how does one prepare for the end when the body grows frail and the days shorten?" The Buddha inclined his head, his gaze fixed gently upon her as he began to speak. "The end," he said, "is not a cessation, but a transition, like the setting sun giving way to the stars' embrace." The disciples listened intently, their expressions a mix of reverence and curiosity as the Buddha continued. To prepare for the end, one must first understand that the journey has no true conclusion, only transformation. He gestured toward the river nearby, its waters flowing endlessly, reflecting the light of the waning day. "Life," he said, "is a river that does not stop flowing, even when it merges with the boundless ocean." A younger disciple, seated at the edge of the circle, raised his voice hesitantly. "Master," he asked, "how do we face this transition without fear clouding our hearts and minds?" The Buddha turned to him, his gaze steady, his voice calm yet profound. "Fear arises from attachment," he replied. "Release the grasp on what was, and embrace the gifts of what is and will be." He picked up a fallen leaf, its surface dry and curling, holding it delicately between his fingers. "This leaf lived fully," he said. "It nourished the tree, gave shade to the weary, and now returns to the earth." The elderly woman nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting both sorrow and understanding as she absorbed the wisdom shared. "Master," she asked, "how do we let go when the heart clings tightly to those we love?" The Buddha placed the leaf gently on the ground, his movements deliberate and filled with intention. "Letting go does not mean forgetting," he said. "It means loving without possession, giving without expectation, and trusting the eternal connection." He pointed to the stars beginning to appear in the twilight sky, their light steady and enduring. "The bonds we form in life," he said, "are like stars, guiding and illuminating even when unseen by the eyes." Another disciple, his hair streaked with gray, spoke up, his voice carrying the weight of contemplation. "Master," he began, "how do we find peace in the face of suffering and the inevitability of loss?" The Buddha closed his eyes briefly, his breath steady, drawing strength from the stillness of the moment. "Peace," he said, opening his eyes, "is not the absence of suffering, but the acceptance of its role in the tapestry of life." He gestured to the flickering lanterns, their flames dancing in the gentle evening breeze. "Suffering," he continued, "is like the flame, consuming yet illuminating, teaching us the depth of compassion and resilience." The gray-haired disciple bowed his head, his face softening as understanding began to dawn within him. The Buddha looked around the circle, his gaze meeting the eyes of each disciple, his presence grounding them. "To face the end with peace," he said, "practice gratitude for the journey, and carry love as your guiding light." He paused, allowing his words to resonate deeply, the silence amplifying their impact. The elderly woman wiped a tear from her cheek, her shoulders relaxing as though a burden had been lifted from her heart. The Buddha's voice grew softer, carrying a tone of gentle reassurance as he continued. "Compassion for oneself and others," he said, "is the bridge that carries us across the river of impermanence." He reached out, touching the trunk of the banyan tree, its roots stretching deep into the earth. "This tree," he said, "stands firm because its roots intertwine with the soil, drawing strength from its connection to the earth." He turned back to the disciples, his words flowing like the river he so often referenced. "Likewise," he said, "your connection to the world and each other fortifies your spirit, even in the face of endings." The lanterns flickered, their light casting shifting shadows that danced across the faces of the gathered. One disciple, seated closer to the tree, spoke in a voice tinged with uncertainty. "Master," he asked, "how do we leave behind a legacy when our time here comes to an end?" The Buddha's gaze rested upon him, his expression filled with a quiet confidence born of understanding. "A legacy," he said, "is not measured by monuments or titles, but by the love and wisdom shared with others." He gestured to the surrounding field, where fireflies began to emerge, their light small yet radiant in the growing darkness. "Each firefly," he said, "shines not to be remembered but to illuminate its moment, leaving beauty as its mark." The disciple nodded, his face reflecting a sense of clarity and purpose as he absorbed the meaning of the Buddha's words. The elderly woman spoke once more, her voice steady despite the emotion behind her question. "Master," she said, "how do we find courage to let go of the fear that holds us back from embracing the end?" The Buddha's face softened, his presence radiating a compassion that seemed to envelop all who were near. "Courage," he said, "is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to take one step forward despite it." He turned his gaze toward the horizon, where the last traces of daylight lingered in a faint golden line. "Just as the sun surrenders to night," he said, "so must we surrender to the cycles of existence, trusting their purpose." The disciples bowed their heads, their hearts opening to the truth woven into the Buddha's words. The Buddha smiled, his expression serene, his voice carrying the weight of wisdom shaped by countless lifetimes. "To age consciously," he said, "is to become a lantern for others, guiding them through the darkness with the light you carry." He paused, the silence that followed filled with an unspoken understanding that bound the group together. "And when the flame extinguishes," he continued, "its warmth remains in the hearts it touched, a legacy eternal and unbroken." The stars now filled the night sky, their brilliance casting a soft light upon the gathering, wrapping them in celestial serenity. The Buddha's voice grew softer still, carrying the intimacy of a whispered truth meant for each soul. "Remember," he said, "the end is but a beginning, and each moment is an opportunity to transcend the illusion of separation." The disciples bowed, deeply, their hands pressed together in reverence, their souls touched by the teachings shared. The elderly woman wept quietly, her tears flowing not from sorrow but from the release of burdens long carried. The Buddha sat still beneath the banyan tree, his presence a beacon of peace and understanding for all who gathered. The night deepened, yet the lessons imparted illuminated the hearts of the disciples, guiding them on the path of conscious aging. The breeze carried the Buddha's final words across the fields, a silent mantra echoing through the stillness of the night. "It is to recognize every offering, whether grand or modest, as a reflection of kindness and effort." The sun dipped below the horizon, its golden light fading into a deep amber glow, enveloping the fields and the disciples in a sacred stillness. Thank you for watching. Buddha's teachings are always with you. Subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next video.